Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, episode 31. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, in this episode, with a little bit of goatee action happening
That's
now,
right.
you looks good on
Yes.
you for the summer.
It's the Michael LeBlanc lookalike.
Well, for those listeners who don't know, we have a YouTube channel now, so you can see this conversation on our YouTube channel. So be sure and check that out. Just search for the Food Professor Podcast on YouTube. In this episode, this is actually our last live regular season episode until after Labor Day. But we've got lots of bonus episodes coming up. We'll talk about those in a minute. And today is our part 2 of our interview with Retail Council of Canada President CEO Diane J. Brisebois. It's a great interview, part 1 and part 2. We really dive into the code of conduct. We're going to talk about that.
That's the juicy part of the interview, which
is
great. I mean, Diane really played the part there. She represents the sector very well. And so, it was a great interview altogether.
Yeah, and as we intended, it was a bookmark. We had Michael Graydon, who represents an organization that basically represents the makers of the food, and also, he's joined in with Sobeys, with Michael Medline. They have a perspective. Diane has a perspective on behalf of Retail Council of Canada and many of the grocers. So it's a nice bookmark for our listeners because you get both sides and you can decide for yourself where it is. And there's been some recent news about it, so we'll get to that a bit later. So that's pretty exciting. And again, reminder for everyone that we've got bonus episodes that are out already. We've got a couple of great interviews with the private label folks at grocers. We've got Stacey Sopinka from Sobeys and Jenny Longo from Longo's, and both of them had lots of product into the Canadian Grand Prix and took home some hardware as well. So great interviews with both of them, and we've got interviews coming up with a brand with Leclerc, great food company. Who
Michael, it's Leclerc. Yeah, they're great innovators. Leclerc and other companies. It's amazing when you take a step back and you look at some of the food innovation happening in Canada. It's pretty amazing, and so I feel fortunate to be able to spend some time with those great innovators, providing Canadians with great food products.
Yeah, you really get a good sense of both their tradecraft and their passion for it, right? I mean, and some of these organizations, not all, have basically, what I find interesting is many of them have basically unlimited resources. Not exactly, but they're big enough to say we could develop anything we wanted to. So their discipline is very customer focused, and of course very performance focused and brand focused. So the three come together. What are we going to make? What's going to be popular? And you know what I liked about particularly about the Jenny Longo interviews is they don't all make it right.
That's right.
We don't get it right all the time, and sometimes maybe we're ahead a couple of years. Sometimes it doesn't always work, right?
I don't know about you, Michael, but as we talk to these great food innovators, you come to realize that the design process of a new food product is similar to designing a new car. Really, the cycle is pretty much the same. It's as lengthy, as hard, as risky as designing a new car, and most people don't know that.
Yeah. And the other thing is, as they strive to make product either locally or nearby, both for economics and for just supply chain and for a whole bunch of other reasons. I mean, it's not always easy, right? They go through different vendors and they got to make it right. And so anyway, it's a great discussion with both on the brand side and on the private label side. So more of that to follow. Actually, we've also got an interview that you and I will be back on the mic with the team that oversees Metro's private label program. And I'm interested that they've got a bunch of different brands and sub brands. So that'll be a great interview. That'll be coming up a little bit later. Let's jump into some of the news. So as we said, later in this episode, Diane will be on talking about, in part 2, talking about code of conduct. But there's been some movement. We recorded that a couple of weeks ago. And Michael Graydon interview a couple of weeks, actually a month now. But since our conversation with Diane, there's been some movement on the file, as the policy wonks would say. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think everyone was expecting something in July from the federal working group, with provinces and territories. And it did happen, actually. I think it was last week, when the working group was basically giving the industry an ultimatum. I don't know how you read the statement, but I saw it as an ultimatum.
Yeah.
You get a
Get it
code,
done. Yeah, get it
get
done.
it done yourself, yourselves, amongst yourselves, or else we're going to have to really come up with something,
Mm,
because we do recognize, the working group has recognized that there's a problem. In fact, as you know, Michael, I did meet with the working group. I think it was about 2 months ago, or maybe three
mm,
months ago,
hmm.
and we did talk about the issues, and there is this recognition that something needs to be done. And so right now, what we're seeing is Ottawa basically asking the industry to get its act together to make sure that
Mm,
that practices are acceptable, ethically, morally acceptable. So it's
mm.
great news, but I don't think it's over. I think there's still a lot of unknowns
Yeah.
here. Is that how you read the statement from Ottawa?
Yeah, it seemed to be very much so. This is an important issue to us. Now, where it sits, because there's an election coming up, will be another interesting thing. But it's not really exactly, as we know, a federal issue. It's complicated, right? Because federal versus provincial
Well,
issues.
this is where I kind of
Mm-hmm.
disagree with folks that are saying it's not a federal issue. It's really, well, yes, it's true. However, you need federal leadership. You can't
Yeah.
really make a code work without some level of national coordination.
Mm,
And I think Deanne will talk about that, and that's why folks like Deanne and Michael got involved, because I mean there is this recognition that you need
yeah.
to really look at this issue federally,
Yeah.
with the support of provinces, of course.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, as a brand or as a retailer operating in Canada means if it doesn't get federally oversight, then you've just got this terrible patchwork to try to deal with
Yeah,
across the provinces, which they deal with in things like recycling and all kinds of other policies. I mean, right down to environmental issues, or like plastic bags goes right down to the municipalities, which is just crazy across the street. Literally,
yeah.
you could have stores on both sides of the street with different rules about plastic bags. Those are starting to resolve themselves. There's starting to be some,
Well, look at food safety. I mean, there are
yeah,
three layers of government, I guess, with food safety in Canada.
yeah,
You got the CFIA in Ottawa, and you have provinces which are responsible for provincially licensed facilities,
yeah,
and cities are responsible for restaurants and retail. So, and we kind of figured things out over the last 20 years or so.
yep.
I think that's where we're going with this one too.
Mm. Well, the good news, I mean, if you take that example, the good news is our food supply chain is very safe, right? We,
Oh yeah.
despite or notwithstanding kind of daily recalls, we don't usually have a lot of them. I mean, we have some problems with with fresh vegetables and stuff coming up from the US. But generally, the food, our food is, you've made this point many, many times. Canada is a leader in food safety. So, anyway, we're a little off topic. But, anyway, as you said, the code of conduct
Yeah.
sounds like it's moving. I guess something might happen left, right, or center. I expect an election call this late summer, early fall. I saw there's been an election called in Nova Scotia. So, you got one coming
Yeah,
yourself.
we're in the middle of an election, and
Yep.
by the time we get to our next episode, we'll know who our
Yep.
next premier will be.
Yep. What
It's
are the
a
key issues? What are the key issues for Nova Scotians? What anything in our range in the food policy area?
well, if you're asking me, or if you're asking what we are likely to talk about
Mm,
by the time we get to the election on August 15th, in my view, the most important issues for the province. The economy comes first,
mm,
absolutely.
yeah.
Immigration would be second, as far as I'm concerned. And rural communities. There are over 1,500
Mm,
municipalities outside of Halifax in Nova Scotia. Many of them have a population of under 20,
mm,
and and I'm not kidding here. So
wow.
there's a lot of governance to support few people,
Yeah.
and I think right now what we need to think about as a province is how do you populate,
Mm.
regions? How do you create jobs in regions? Because that's how you're going to populate
Yep.
regions. Really,
The
how do
economic
you grow
opportunity.
economy?
Yeah.
Because Halifax is booming. I think
Yeah.
if you come to Halifax, like many urban centers in Canada, the economy is actually doing fine. It's just
Yeah.
outside, and it's the same in New Brunswick, same in other places in the country. So that to me, that would be the
Mm.
top priorities. But unfortunately, I suspect that healthcare will be talked about quite a bit in light of the COVID, of course,
Yeah.
because we did lose a lot of people in healthcare homes, in senior homes, like
Mm.
Quebec, actually, but
Like Ontario, I think
like
that's
Ontario.
like
So I
every
suspect that
province
it's going
needs
to come
to.
up a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, every province needs to look hard at that issue. I
yeah,
mean, and I guess from the headwind from the Atlantic bubble in terms of the economics, you've got it feels like a big tailwind. I mean, as things start to open up, year over year growth, any new government's going to get some great year over year numbers. I mean, just recently we've announced this week the border with our friends in the U.S. is opening up.
yeah,
That's great for tourism in Halifax and Nova Scotia and the Maritimes,
yeah.
the Atlantic provinces. So that's all great. So anyway, we'll see about that.
No,
Um,
it's a very positive, and
yeah.
yeah, I think we need to. I mean, we need to take some time this summer to celebrate what we've
Hmm.
gone through,
Yep.
and I know you got your second shot. I'm going to get my second shot on Friday
Oh, great.
here in the province of Quebec. I
Hmm.
hear that the Pfizer they have in Quebec is better than Nova Scotia. That's what I heard.
I think they're all made in Belgium, so I'm
Yeah,
not sure it really
exactly.
matters. I'm not sure it really matters. But anyway, well, good luck with that. My kids just had it, and they're in their early 20s. No side effects like myself, other than a bit of a sore arm and
Yeah,
a little bit of fatigue. So good luck with that. That's great news.
yeah.
Um, I want to move on to the food price report. You recently posted around getting some academic. I wanted to talk about two things. One, some academic recognition for the report, and then two, how's it going? Because I think you guys start now-ish, like it's a long run production cycle. So talk about that.
Yeah, no. So first of all, like often you get some recognition by applying for awards. You
Mm,
just apply and then you get
sure.
a note of
Yeah.
some sort. This came out of nowhere. We had no idea. I honestly, Michael, I didn't even know these prizes actually existed. It's called Gourmand International.
Mm.
It's actually headed by the Alfred Nobel Museum in
Huh.
Sweden. And so we were notified last week that that Canada's Food Price Report, 11th edition, 2021, was shortlisted under the category University Press because they have tons of categories. So we are shortlisted to represent Canada
It's great.
for these awards, and I think we should know whether or not we win. I think it's January or February of 2022, but I'm not
Oh,
sure. But we were very pleased to get the note, and
yeah.
I did notify our partners, the University of Guelph, Saskatchewan, and UBC, and we're all thrilled. So this is great. As you know, Michael, this is a multi-institutional collaboration
Yep.
project that requires a lot of work, a lot of coordination. So, and we're working on our 12th edition already.
Yep.
And we have a new partner, which is Nielsen IQ. Nielsen
Oh.
IQ will actually provide us with the data, the actual data coming from grocers,
Mm.
telling us exactly what's been going on with food inflation. We're not The numbers coming out of StatsCan aren't necessarily trustworthy. We
Mm.
do feel that some of the numbers are not accurate, which is why we prefer to rely on numbers coming out of Nielsen IQ. So we're very
Mm.
pleased to get the support from a really great organization, Nielsen IQ. And frankly, I mean, some of the data that they have is unaffordable for most. So
Mm.
we feel very lucky and fortunate to work with Nielsen IQ for this year moving forward.
How do you account for in this report? And maybe it's just too difficult. You've called it shrinkflation. In other words,
Yeah,
where brands they put out the same product, they keep the price at the same price point, but they make the product a little smaller.
Yeah.
And that's nothing new. And it is a way for brands to kind of keep their price point and keep things at what price they feel it needs to be. But it is in an inverted way inflation, right? You're getting less for your money than you did the day before. And do you factor that into the report, or is that something that's a
Well, actually,
goal?
Nielsen IQ does, but
Hmm.
not necessarily Stats Can, because we've never been able to get real clear answers from Stats Canada when it comes
Hmm.
to how they actually collect data. They'll send you a document telling you what the methodology is and how many data collectors they have, but they don't necessarily tell you what brands they look at
Hmm.
and when they look at them, how the data is collected. Do they just make a phone call to grocers? Do they actually show up at the grocery store? Under which
Hmm.
banner? There's a lot of unknowns that really made us feel uncomfortable. But with Nelson IQ, we get more transparency. But
Hmm.
the issue of shrinkflation, and as you mentioned, has been around for many decades.
Sure.
But strategies have evolved, though. I don't know
Hmm.
if you've noticed, but back in 2008, 2009, whenever commodity prices go up, that's when you start seeing more shrinkflation
Sure.
cases, because
Sure.
costs for manufacturers do go up and they don't want to spook their clients, which is
Yep.
uh, fine. I mean, it's really, that's how it is. Um, in 2008, 2009, it was really about uh, lowering quantities per unit, I
Hmm.
guess, over several months. What we're seeing now, there's still some of that going on, but what we're seeing now is that companies will actually shrink bite sizes.
Hmm.
They'll keep the same quantity, and 6 months, a year later, they'll actually reduce the number of units inside a
Ah.
box or a package. So, for example, if you manufacture cookies, you may actually shrink the size of a cookie. You'll still keep the 200 grams or so per package, but a year or two from now, you're basically training the market to
Hmm.
accept a smaller cookie, a
Hmm.
smaller bite size,
Hmm.
which will eventually lead to shrinkflation. And so I think companies are getting smarter with shrinkflation. I don't know about you, but I'm not upset about shrinkflation at all. There's nothing wrong with it. It's
No.
just, and it actually leads. I think it leads people to waste less. To be honest,
Yeah.
we're buying too much food anyways, and so it's kind of the 90s and early 2000 in reverse. We were getting too much for our money. Now we're
Hmm.
packages are shrinking,
Hmm.
and people are getting upset by shrinkflation. But with shrinkflation, I don't really see an issue with that at all.
Right. I guess it's interesting how it factors in, and what you say about notwithstanding what you say about the stats can data, your report has been relentlessly accurate.
Yes.
The models behind it seem to ingest data and do the magic. So it'll be super interesting to see what happens with the Nielsen data. I'm sure you're looking forward to seeing how that gets ingested and what changes come out. And I'm not surprised somebody in Stockholm would have heard about the report. You had so much publicity for it. What'd you say, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of impressions around the world. So,
Well,
uh,
the market reach for the report every given year, it reaches about 100 million
wow,
people,
wow,
which is a lot. So yeah, and I suspect that this year won't be an exception. Where we actually give interviews about food prices all year round.
mm,
This year has been particular busy.
yeah,
A lot of people are concerned, and prices are going up.
yeah,
And the one thing I try to explain to people about food inflation is that it's not necessarily a game of averages. When we say 5%, some people may say, well, 5%, who cares? It's not that much. Well,
mm,
it's not about averages. 5% is the average, but if you go to the meat counter and you're a fan of sirloin steak or something, you're not going to see 5%. You're going to see 12 or 13 or 15%.
right.
And peanut butter has gone up this year too. So that's going to upset a lot of people for the first time in 20 years. So you can see that really COVID and
Yeah.
macroeconomic factors as have impacted the entire grocery store. So there's no safe place for consumers right now.
There's a great headline in the New York Times today because the U.S. economy is on fire, growth beyond, but there's inflation creeping in. Now, some of that inflation is creeping in because people are actually going back and traveling in hotel rooms. I was looking at some of the
Yep.
analysis, and a hotel room in New York was $150. Well, now it's back up to 400, more normal rate. So that factors into inflation, right? The people are doing their more normal lives. But they said, is the economy on fire? Good. And is there inflation? The answer to both is yes. So we're going to go through this kind of recovery. It's going to be choppy. I think it feels, unfortunately, a little more choppy in the U.S. Southern U.S. is really
My
struggling.
my biggest concern, Michael,
Mm.
is labor. I mean,
Hard to
uh,
find,
my
expensive.
wife and I
Yeah.
just booked a hotel room in Quebec City last week,
Mm.
and prices were very similar to the pre-COVID era. But when we actually arrived at the hotel, so we said we wanted to rent a nice room in a nice hotel in Quebec, but it was sold out. And when I said to the person, well, we wanted to stay at the other hotel, but it was sold out. And he said, well, it wasn't sold out. It's just they block 70% of all
Wow.
rooms because they
Couldn't
don't have
staff it.
anybody to clean them.
Well, I'm having similar issues. We're as a family, we're off to Banff. Enjoy the great. We've never been to Banff in Alberta, so we're looking forward to that. And
For your birthday.
birthday and wedding anniversary, my wife's birthday.
Yeah.
It's like the trifecta of activities in the middle of
Very
August.
strategic. Very strategic.
Yeah, it's funny how it came together. Actually, like on our first date. When again? Are
Sure,
you?
sure.
When are
It's not by
you?
design.
Yeah. Yeah. When were you born? So let's just make sure. Anyway,
Yeah. Let's make
uh,
it a package, a
let's
life
let's get
package.
married in the middle of it, and then we'll that'll just make it very highly productive.
It's all
But
about convenience and economies of scale.
yeah, 25 years later.
Yeah.
But they're having the same issue, and their biggest issue, I spoke to a couple of restaurants as I'm making reservations, was they don't have the foreign students who would typically flood into Canada to spend their summer working in Banff. Right, they're not allowed in to the country.
Yeah.
So they're really short. So I talking to our family last night. He said, we always pack a lot of patience when we're on at all times, but pack double patience because it's going to be really slow. Speaking of Alberta, I was looking at this new made in Alberta by Albertans with Albertan parents who our forefathers came from Alberta brand. Um,
Yeah.
Why is this even news that they're launching a program about made in Alberta by Albertans? It seems like a great initiative to
You have
do.
no idea why it's news? Really?
Well, no, why is it news?
Albertans have had an awkward relationship with the buy local movement. I mean, when you look at the economy, even Saskatchewan has the same relationship with the buy local movement, because when you think about the ag economy, it's all about exports. And when they think about buy local in the prairies, they often think about protectionism and saying,
Hmm.
well, food sovereignty is not something that can work for us, and because we feed the world, so why should we be asking Albertans to support farmers when most of our farmers are actually exporting products all over the world? It doesn't make any sense. Well, now the province is facing the reality that the oil industry is going to shrink, and they have to build the economy in some other way.
Hmm.
So, and they're looking at agri-food as a really potent way to grow the economy.
Yeah.
And it's hard to grow an economy if you don't get the support of consumers. And it's not just about, I don't think it's about selling food. It's about pride. It's about actually, it's about inviting Albertans to know what the hell's going on in the province in the first place, because most Albertans wouldn't even know what's being grown in Alberta. It's all about supporting the economy. So I actually think it's a great thing. And like I said, I think the buy local movement has evolved into something else. About a decade or two ago, it was all about food sovereignty. Let's support our farmers. Let's actually try to think of the buy local movement as something that would operate within a system with closed borders or something like that.
Hmm.
Now it's much more. The concept is much more open than that. And so I think the fact that Alberta is launching a buy local program points to the fact that the buy local movement has matured and evolved over
Interesting.
time.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to experience it firsthand. We're flying into Calgary. We're having a couple of meals in Calgary and out. So I'm going to ask people what they think about this. It did strike me as kind of odd. I didn't understand the background. That it
Yeah,
couldn't.
that's well, I lived in the prairies for 7 years, and
Sure.
so there is a unique way of seeing things in the prairies, and I totally understand it. And to me, it was an indication that something is happening in Alberta. I think
Hmm.
this is so seeing a conservative government, really, asking people to buy local is not a move.
Hmm.
Is not is won't be seen as a protectionist move, I
Hmm.
guess, against imported products.
Well, interesting. I'll experience it myself firsthand, and
Yeah,
and of course, one of their other big crops that they try to diversify, cannabis, continues to do quite well. Alberta's, was an early pioneer, so to speak, in
yeah.
retail cannabis. A lot of it's grown there. So
Well, retail for alcohol and cannabis, and you'll see that
privatized.
when
Yeah.
you go to Alberta, is all privatized.
Yep.
You actually, it's funny when you go to Alberta and you buy booze, you actually feel like a customer and not a taxpayer. It feels really weird.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try both. I'm gonna buy
They
both.
actually,
And
so when you buy a lot of bottles, they actually accompany you to your car.
what?
Oh yeah,
Say
they
what?
actually bring they
No,
bring the
no.
box.
Now, to be fair, at the LCBO in Ontario, which is government owned, last time I bought lot of bottles, they came out with me. They helped, and they're very helpful. I like the LCBO here. Now, they are the
It's funny,
second.
you don't look frail and old. Maybe you do now.
You don't know how much I was buying. That's the part of it.
That's right. They actually
Um,
brought the boxes over to your car?
yeah, I did. I do pick up. Like I shop online, pick up in store, right? So it's all ready for
Oh,
me,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Did you give them a
Um,
tip?
no, no, I didn't give them a tip.
Oh
A
my
tip? I
god.
wouldn't think of giving them a tip, actually. Huh.
Because 'Cause you're paying taxes.
Well, no, it's funny, right? It's a great tipping. I think about tipping people in restaurants. I don't think
Because the
about tipping.
LCBO these are government workers, right?
They're
But
all
in
government workers. That's
Alberta,
right.
it's a private company, right? Selling you booze.
Hmm.
So you kinda have to tip them.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, that's a good tip. Um,
Yeah,
what I did
exactly.
there. Let's end off with this little bit of news about Health Canada and pesticides, that they're talking about
Yeah.
allowing more glyphosate. Do I have that word right? Uh,
Glyphosate.
glyphosate in
Glyphosate.
glyphosate in foods. Now, there seems to, not
It's banned in
surprisingly,
many cities, but Health Canada has other plans for farmers. Yeah.
there seems to be no, like many of these issues, two sides of the table. If some of the farmers are saying it's fine, others are saying that's not a great thing. What's your perspective on the broader issue?
Well, I mean, I think city dwellers underappreciate the risk that farmers have to deal with. It's complicated out there, and they often look at their lawns the same way as they look at wheat fields and
Right.
canola fields. I mean,
Right.
it's not it stakes are different. I mean, completely different.
Yeah.
And so I actually do trust Health Canada on this one. I think they're actually making the right move. Um, let's face it, our growing season is much shorter than other places around the world. In order to make sure that our agriculture remains competitive,
Hmm.
you want to make sure that farmers are tooled appropriately. And genetic engineering is a thing. It's something that really will play a huge role because of climate change for farmers. I mean, we need more research. We need
Yeah.
more genetic engineering, and with that comes a portfolio of different products like herbicides and fungicides and chemicals that you
Hmm.
need in order to increase yields. Alternatives are actually sometimes more poisonous than the infamous Roundup,
Hmm.
and so I'm a little bit concerned by the lack of information that a lot of people have. People love to hate Roundup
Yeah.
without really knowing why. They just don't like Monsanto. They don't like Roundup, and they don't want it to be as far. they want to stay away from these products as much as possible. But
Hmm.
when you look at human risk, and Health Canada has done a pretty good job evaluating human risk related to glyphosate, risks are minimized
Hmm.
immensely when used. The one thing I would note, though, is that there is abuse. I mean, farmers tend to spray everything all the time, and with precision agriculture, you tend to be more
Hmm.
responsible and spray more strategically where it's needed. And I think
Hmm.
more and more farmers are starting to do that.
Well,
Uh,
you would think so because of the economics, just how much
yeah,
Roundup or
and they'll
whatever.
save money too. Yeah,
Right. I
absolutely.
mean, there seems to be an economic incentive to use less of anything like that, just from
Yeah.
how much
The other thing
barrels
I
you're
would
going to buy.
note, though, and so we need to be careful with how we deal with
Mm.
glyphosate, is that environmental risks are still somewhat unknown, unlike human risks. So it's
Oh, I
not
see.
cancerous.
Yeah.
In fact, in June, Europe actually has published, Europe of all places,
Mm.
has published a report stating that glyphosate is not cancerous. Unlike other products that other reports that we've seen in North America,
Mm.
which led to this confusion, and that's why a lot of people are concerned and are afraid of
Mm.
glyphosate. Now, the environmental risk, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of evaluating environmental risks related to glyphosate. That's the one thing I would note.
Mm.
Health Canada's endorsement has nothing to do with
With
the
that
environment.
side, yeah. I mean, it reminds me
Yeah.
of the DDT, right? I mean, DDT
Yeah.
was outlawed because it was, amongst other things, thinning out eggs of owls or hawks or something,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was more the
So
environmental.
it's a win for farmers, but it's not like an outright win.
Right. Well,
So yeah,
it's a long
and
announcement.
frankly, with everything, with Health Canada, Environment Canada, they'll continue to evaluate the situation,
Hmm.
because the technologies used by farmers are going to change as a result of climate change, as a result of research. So you constantly have to evaluate risks all the time. So yeah, consultations are over
Hmm.
as of July 20th, but not the research.
Yeah, interesting. It's so interesting. Well, it's a great episode so far. Let's get to our interview with Diane J. Brisebois, President and CEO of Retail Council Canada. She's going to talk all about a little bit more about the organization, but a lot about the code of conduct. So let's have a listen to that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, see, there's my editor sense giving these breaks. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're not about to see the interview with Deanne, but tune in to the podcast and you'll hear the interview with Deanne, but you will not see that on camera. But our traffic, by the way, is picking up nicely on YouTube. So thank you for everyone
Oh, good. Yeah.
who's watching both the full episodes and the segments that we create. And please subscribe. As the kids would say, smash that subscribe button because right there. Yep, right there. I think I'm pointing to the right place.
That's
So
right.
smash those buttons, become a subscriber, and you'll automatically just be notified that a new episode is up and ready. So with that, let's wrap it up. If you liked this episode, you can follow us on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the grocery, food service, or restaurant industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the all-new Conversations with Commerce Next podcast, and a bunch of other stuff.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois.
Sylvain, have a great ride. Keep on riding this summer. We'll be back again in the fall with a great interview with a senior executive from Metro who provides us a fantastic overview and lots more to come
Yeah.
for the rest of the year. So have a great summer. Bonus episodes still coming up, and we'll see you in the fall.
Well, Michael, happy birthday. Happy anniversary. I'll
Thank
see you
you.
in the fall.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.